Hey guys, so today I'm going to be bringing you some of my easy care plants in my collection. These plants are perfect for beginners, perfect for people that are wanting to bring plants in their home but just don't know which ones to start off with. So I'm going to show you a variety of easy care plants that you can bring into your home and have success with. Hey guys, my name is Colby and welcome to my channel. If you guys like anything plant related such as plant tutorials, tips and tricks, plant tours, DIYs and that kind of stuff, then you might want to hit the subscribe button at the bottom. Don't forget to hit the bell icon and turn on your notifications so you don't miss any of the planty content that I bring you every week. So let's start with one of my favorite easy care plants, which are the Syngoniums. Now these are more commonly known as the arrowhead plant or arrowhead vine. And they come in so many different varieties. This right here is the Syngonium pixie, which is one of the smaller leafed varieties in the Syngonium family. If you take a closer look, you can see the beautiful white midrib and white veining on this plant. The specific species is more compact and more bushy, so if that's the type of look that you're going for, then this might be a good variety for you to get. But if you like more color in your plants, then you might want to go for something like the Syngonium neon, which has these pink type of leaves and pink veining. There's a lot of confusion as to which exact species of Syngonium this is, whether it be neon or coral, depending on how pink the leaves are. But what my experience and what I've noticed that a few months ago when I had it in a lower light situation or in a bright indirect light situation, it did give me a lot more pink in its leaves. But when I did move it into bright direct light, maybe about a month ago, then the pink in its leaves did start to fade. So I'm gonna pull it back from the window and then see if the pink starts to become more prominent once again. And it's a cool little experiment to see how light and color in your leaves actually play a role together. So I'll give you an update on this probably in the next few months. If you also like something with white variegation, then you might like the Syngonium albo variegatum. Now this has pure white variegation on it. It's one of my favorite species, but it's not the easiest to come by. It is one of the more rare types and more sought after types of Syngoniums. But this was given to me as a shoot and I grew it about a year ago. It grew into quite a large plant and then I just cut it up and propagated it because I wanted a more bushy type of plant. And it is our winter months, and as you can see, even though it is our winter months, my Syngonium is still giving me new leaves and new growth. So easy care plants, these can handle different light situations. They can handle low light, high light, direct sunlight. I've even seen some of the Syngoniums grow in. But in my experience, I think that my Syngoniums appreciate bright indirect light, and that's when they push out the most growth and tend to have the best type of color. So watering your Syngoniums. Now Syngoniums love to be watered more regularly, and I tend to water my Syngoniums at least twice a week in my summer months, and in my winter months I tend to pull more back on the watering, maybe once every 2 weeks. But it also depends on what pot you keep your Syngoniums in. It depends on what lighting you have your Syngoniums in. So I'd suggest is just feeling your soil, sticking your finger maybe to your second knuckle, and if you feel the soil is dry, then give it a good watering and it should be happy with that. Fertilizing these Syngoniums, they do love to be fed. Mainly because Syngoniums are so robust when it comes to growing and pushing out new growth. They do love to be fed quite a bit. So I do fertilize my Syngoniums in the growing season at least once a week. But what I do as well, in addition to liquid fertilizer, is that I put some slow release fertilizing capsules in my potting soils. I make my own little gel capsules that are filled with Osmocote. So if you want to see me do that there, let me know in the comments below and I will take you through that as well. Okay, so that's Syngoniums. What do we have next? Okay, let's do ZZ plants because we cannot do an easy care plant video without mentioning the ZZ plants, because These are one of the most easiest plants I have kept in my collection. They are absolute no-brainer plants. They don't require much water. They don't like to be watered quite often. And as you can see, they have these shiny green leaves with thick succulent stems that tell you that this plant actually holds in quite a lot of water and moisture. So ZZ plants, they can handle bright light, they can handle some of your lowest lighting situations in your home. So it's a perfect plant to put practically anywhere in your home and it will be happy. With my ZZ plant, I tend to water it maybe once every 2 weeks. In my winter months, maybe once every 3 to 4 weeks, and it seems to be happy. I do have my ZZ plant placed in a more direct sunlight area, and it seems to be pushing out more growth. Also, a tip to take in, or something to take into consideration with the ZZ plant is, if you have it pulled away from the window, it tends to start bending towards the light. So I sometimes rotate my ZZ plant maybe once every week just to make sure that it grows more upright and more straight instead of curving to one side. So ZZ plants also a very, very easy care plant to keep in your collection if that's the type of plant that you like. Okay, so next up I have is the Ficus elastica. Now these plants are more commonly known as the rubber plant or rubber trees. This specific species right here that I have is called the Ficus elastica Abidjan. Now, I did get this plant over the weekend when I did some plant shopping, and I did take some footage of the nurseries that I visited, so I will be bringing you that very soon. But when I saw this plant, I just had to have it. It's been on my plant wish list for such a long time, and you can see why. It has these shiny green, dark green, thick leaves with the maroon undertone. So an absolutely beautiful plant to have in your home. It does prefer bright, a more brighter light situation than its cousin, which is the Ficus elastica Tineke robusta, which I have right here. Now this has more lighter green leaves with white variegation. It also has these pink tones to it, which is super pretty, but the pink tones tend to fade out as the leaves get more mature. That's one thing that I've noticed about this plant. Also, what I've noticed is that they do not like bright, direct light. When I kept this plant next to my window, it started to get these brown burn spots. So I quickly pulled it back maybe about 1 meter, 2 meters away from my window, and it's doing much more better now. These plants do tend to grow quite large, so if you're looking for a plant that looks more like a tree or a tree type of plant in your home, then this might be a perfect choice for you. Watering situations, these plants do like to be watered when the soil is dry. They do not like to be overwatered, so take that into mind when taking care of this plant. So it's another super easy plant. It's a stunning plant to keep. There's multiple different varieties. There's also the ruby, and I think I've also seen another lime green variegated type, which is on my plant wish list as well. But hopefully my country will actually get it in soon, so fingers crossed. Okay, so I cannot talk about easy care plants without mentioning the SANSEVIERIA species. Now, if you guys haven't watched my previous video on indestructible plants, I will leave a link in the description below and you can check that out as well. I practically just talk about my SANSEVIERIA zeylanica that's right behind me here that hasn't been watered for over a year and still looks amazing. I also talk about the SANSEVIERIA hanea that either sits in water for weeks on end or sits bone dry for months on end and still manages to push out new growth for me. But I also got a new SANSEVIERIA just to show you guys another species. I'm using you guys as an excuse to get more plants. But this is the SANSEVIERIA moonshine. Now this is a bluish, whiter type of SANSEVIERIA that you can get. And there's a multitude of different species that you can get out there. There's stuff like the whale spin SANSEVIERIA, there's the cylindrica, there's variegated types. So if you go to a nursery, you will always come by some sort of SANSEVIERIA that you can get. And super easy care plants, they can handle a multitude of conditions. They can handle high light, low light. They can handle not being watered for long periods of time. Some of my SANSEVIERIA haven't even been watered for a few months and they still look amazing. So another easy care plant to give a quick mention to is the SANSEVIERIAs. Okay, so next up on my easy care plant list is peperomias. Now, I did have a bunch of peperomias to show you guys, but unfortunately, my dog got to them before I could, and after dropping my pots, he then proceeded to sit on them, so they're in quite bad shape. But over the weekend when I went plant shopping, I did get some peperomia just to show you guys. This is the Peperomia obtusifolia plain green form, and this is the Peperomia obtusifolia marbled or variegated obtusifolia. This has green leaves with yellow variegation on it. Peperomias have thick succulent type of leaves and stems, which tell you that they store a lot of water in them and they don't like to be overwatered. Water these plants when the soil does dry out to prevent root rot and to keep your plant happy. Lighting situations with these guys, I kind of like, in my experience, I figured that certain type of my peperomia prefer a higher light situation, but most of them do well in a higher light situation. But types like the obtusifolia variegated, the variegated types of peperomia, don't do very well in low light situations. Their variegations tend to get lighter and they start reverting back to a green form. So to maintain their variegations, then you want to put these plants in a higher light situation. Peperomias, easy care plants. There is another peperomia that I have that I want to show you guys, but I do not recommend this as a easy care plant. This is one of my most difficult plants to keep alive. Do not ask me why. It took me quite a long time to get this plant, but I just haven't figured out what it really requires at the moment, because it does not require the same as the other easy care peperomias. And I know a lot of people have problems with the watermelon peperomia, but it is a stunning plant nonetheless. I do not recommend this plant as an easy care plant though. So next up I have the DIEFFENBACHIA, or more commonly known as the dumb cane. Now this right here is the DIEFFENBACHIA Camille, and I do have a few varieties in my collection. There is one that is my favorite, but I do not know what species it is. But when I saw it at the nursery, I just could not resist. And you guys can see why. Look how stunning these leaves are. They are variegated with lime green and dark green. Absolutely stunning. But I just don't know what species this is. So if you guys have any idea, leave a comment in the comments below and I'd highly appreciate it. Let's talk about care requirements. Now, watering, let's start with watering. These guys are very forgiving when it comes to watering, but if you leave this plant for long periods of time without water, it does tend to give you a sign and drop some leaves at the bottom. I water my DIEFFENBACHIA at least once a week in the summer months, and in the winter months I tend to pull back maybe once every 2 weeks. Lighting requirements with these guys, for me, in my experience, I find the DIEFFENBACHIA do much better in a brighter light situation than in lower light. They can tolerate low light, but they tend to also lose a lot of leaves at the bottom of the plant, leaving the bottom more bald and more bushy on the top. But given brighter light, they tend to become more bushy and send out more growth. So DIEFFENBACHIA, another easy care plant that you can keep, multitude of varieties that you can pick from, and they are all stunning and easy to care for. Okay, so next up I'm going to show you the plant that actually got me hooked and so obsessed into this hobby, which is the SPATHIPHYLLUM, or more commonly known as the peace lily. Now this right here is called the peace lily petite. It's one of the dwarf species of the peace lily family. And you get so many different types of peace lilies. There's hundreds of types that you can get, and it's so difficult to tell them apart. But you do get small species like this petite, you get medium species like the Walisi, and you get giant types like this SPATHIPHYLLUM sensation right here. Now this is still a baby at the moment, and as it reaches adult form, it would reach around about 1.5 meters to 2 meters in height. So I just can't wait for that to reach adult form and see how massive and majestic it's going to be looking. Okay, so care requirements for peace lilies. Now, if you're the type of person that tends to overwater their plants, then this might be the perfect plant for you to begin with, because these plants love to be watered, and they will actually tell you when they need water, because when they are dry and they need water, the leaves will tend to droop down. And I do have an example of a petite that actually hasn't been watered, just to show you guys the difference between a sad peace lily that needs some water compared to one that is watered and happy and vibrant. Now, these plants do not like chlorine or chloramine or any chemicals in the water. So what I tend to do is either water it with rainwater or filtered water, or what I do in times that I don't have that available is I tend to bottom water it, where I get a bowl and just soak the plant in for a few hours, and then it seems to be fine after that. Lighting requirements. Now, lighting requirements for peace lilies, they can tolerate low light situations and they can do perfectly fine in low light situations. But if you want to see those white blooms coming up, then you're going to want to give this plant a much more brighter indirect sunlight or bright indirect light, and then you'll start seeing more of the blooms coming up. Now, personally, I'm not such a huge fan of flowers or anything of that sort. I'm more of a foliage type of guy, so I can keep them anywhere in my house and just be happy with the green, beautiful foliage that it gives me. Okay, so next up we have the aglaonemas or Chinese evergreens. Now, these are one of my favorite plants as well. I tell you that all my plants are my favorites. So because it's so hard to choose which ones are your favorites. I mean, you're gonna buy a plant because you love it, not because you hate a certain plant. So all of my plants, I love them to bits. So yeah, back to the evergreen or the Chinese evergreens or aglaonemas. This right here is called the Silver Queen. It's actually a stunning plant. If you look at it closely, it has green leaves with a silver type or bluish type of variegation on it. Now, my camera doesn't actually pick up the bluish tones in it, but in reality, this plant is absolutely stunning. And I was on a Facebook group the other day. I think it was an aglaonema type of group, and I was actually blown away with how many different types of aglaonemas there are. And some of the aglaonemas were absolutely mind-blowing, guys. With the colors that they came in was just out of this world. And for aglaonemas to be an easy care plant and to offer that type of variety and be so easy to care for, I think it's an amazing plant to actually start collecting. If you want to start collecting a type of plant and you just want to collect one species, I think maybe go with the Chinese evergreens. They're super easy to care for, don't require much. Lighting requirements with these plants, they can handle high light, low light, bright indirect light, so any type of light they can handle. Watering these guys they're so forgiving when it comes to watering. If you forget to water them for a week or so, they don't put up a big performance like some of the other plants. Hint, hint, calatheas. So yeah, I tend to water my aglaonemas at least once a week in the summer months and once every 2 weeks in the winter months. But I always test or see if my soil is super dry, and that's when I give it a nice watering. I don't like to overwater these plants because I don't like the risk of root rot. And because these plants can handle periods of time without water, then why water it often? Why risk root rot? Just leave the plant and wait for the soil to dry up and then give it a watering. It is forgiving and it will forgive you for that. So really great easy care plant, your Chinese evergreens, aglaonemas. Okay, so next up is a quick one. It is the vanilla orchid. Now, this is another easy care plant that actually produces the vanilla pods that give you the vanilla flavor. And it's a super easy care plant. It has these shiny green leaves that are thick and succulent, like super easy to propagate. I actually got this as a cutting, and one day the wind just blew it over and the stem broke off. All I did was just stick it back into the soil, and as you can see right here, it's sending me a whole bunch of new growth from that pot that I stuck in the soil. It's a really easy care plant. These plants, I've seen them grow in full sun and do brilliantly. They do only produce the vanilla pods when they are fully mature and they are much larger. For me, I keep my vanilla orchid in a more bright indirect light situation, and it's doing amazing so far. So just a quick one, vanilla orchids, another easy care and interesting plant to keep in your collection. Okay, so my next plant might be familiar to you, your parents, or more so your grandparents, and I think you might guess it before I even show it on screen, and it is the pothos. Now, it does go by the name of Epipremnum aureum, or golden pothos, or even devil's ivy. It has a multitude of names, and if you can see here, it has green leaves with yellow variegation on it. It's quite a beautiful plant, very easy to care for, can handle high light, low light. It can even handle artificial light in your home, which makes it a perfect plant to put in every or any corner in your home. It does, however, prefer the soil to be dried out before getting some water. I noticed that this plant starts to shed a lot of leaves when you overwater it or you underwater it a lot. It will send you signs when the leaves are looking a little bit wrinkly and saggy, then you'll know to give it some water. I have another species as well of pothos, which is the marble queen. And the marble queen has pure white variegation with, it just has green leaves with pure white variegation. Absolutely beautiful, one of my favorite types of pothos. But I did notice with my marble queen is that when you give it a lower light area to be in, it tends to, the white variegation tends to go more on the cream side than more white. So if you want the variegation to stand out and be more whiter and brighter, then you might want to give it more light. It is one of my more slower growing pothos that I have. It takes forever to send out new shoots, so you just got to have some patience with the marble queen. Okay, so next up I have your fining philodendrons, such as your philodendron Brazil that I have here, which has green leaves, bright green leaves with a variegated center, yellow variegated midrib. It looks absolutely stunning, but I do notice that this plant does much better in a brighter light situation. When I did move it to a lower light, it started to get very bald on the top. But as soon as I moved it to brighter light, it started pushing out more new growth on the top. These plants, when they do start to get leggy, you want to just give them a nice trim and propagate those pieces that you get. When you trim these plants, it actually encourages more top growth, so the plant tends to fill out more on the top. These plants, my philodendron Brazil tends to like a lot more watering than the pothos that I have, and they kept in the similar areas, but I water my pothos maybe once a month, but my Brazil I have to water sometimes once a week in the winter days or in the winter months, and in the summer days sometimes I water it maybe twice a week to 3 times a week. But it pushes out a lot of growth. The philodendron Brazil actually grows maybe like a meter a month, I would say. It's just a vigorous grower when you give it the right conditions. I do have another type of vining philodendron, but there's a lot of confusion with myself and what this is actually called, because I know that on the internet it says that this plant is called the philodendron HEDERACEUM aureum. But a lot of people on YouTube, I noticed, call this the philodendron lemon lime because of the dark green leaves paired with the lighter yellow type of leaves. So I'm not sure exactly what to call it. Maybe it has different or multiple names that we know it as. But yeah, it's also another easy care plant. Also requires the same type of requirements as the Brazil and prefers a brighter light. This plant is looking a bit bald on the top because when I moved it to a lower light situation, it did get very bald, but once I moved it to brighter light, it started filling out and becoming more lush and more healthier. It's sending out a bunch of new growth on the top, so that's a good sign. So easy care plant, doesn't take much to keep this plant happy. Philodendron HEDERACEUM, you got the Brazil and the lemon lime or the aureum. Okay, so next up is one of my absolute favorite plants in my collection. It's one of my pride and joys, and it is the SCINDAPSUS PICTUS exotica. Now, I'm just a sucker for plants that have a blue hue to it, and paired with silver variegation, it is an absolute stunner. And if you look at it up close, you can see that it has green leaves with silver variegation on it. And if you look at this plant in reality and you really look close up, you can see that the silver variegation has a sparkle to it, kind of like it's embedded with silver glitter. So that's how beautiful this plant is. I do have another one that's similar. It is the SCINDAPSUS PICTUS argyrius. It is a smaller variety. It has more green on the leaves and less of the silver speckling. It's an absolutely beautiful plant. It's one of the cuttings that I took from a larger plant that I had. Easy care plant. They thrive in a higher light situation. They can tolerate low light, but they really thrive and push out a lot of growth when it is in a high light situation. With watering, when it comes to these plants, they will tell you when to water. The biggest tip I can give you is wait for the leaves to start curling in and then water it. Once majority of the leaves start curling, just water it like 3 times through until the soil is saturated enough, and then by the next day you'll notice that the leaves will flatten out and look absolutely amazing. So one of my favorite easy care plants is the SCINDAPSUS PICTUS exotica. Okay, so last but not least is, in my opinion, the king of the plant world, which is the MONSTERA deliciosa. Now, my species that I have, or my specimens that I have, are just too large for me to bring into frame right now, but I will show you a video above of the specimens that I do have, and as you can see, it is absolutely stunning. It's these huge, large leaves with a whole bunch of fenestrations in it. If you want the ultimate tropical vibe in your home, then I would suggest a MONSTERA deliciosa. It just looks so majestic and ancient when it matures. And it is a super easy care plant for me personally. It can handle high light, low light. It can even handle full sun. In my experience, they prefer a well-draining soil that dries out between watering. So take that into consideration when getting one of your monsteras. So one of my favorite plants in the plant hobby that actually got me more and more hooked into keeping plants, the MONSTERA deliciosa, highly recommended as a easy plant. Okay, so that's a wrap, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I do apologize if this video was a bit long, but I just wanted to show you guys a variety of plants that you can keep as a beginner plant hobbyist, or if you're wanting to keep plants in your home but just don't know which plants to bring in. Hopefully I've given you some great choices. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button at the bottom. Also, let me know in the comments below on what videos you'd like to see me do in the future, whether it be specific plant topics, DIYs, that kind of stuff. So just leave a comment in the comments below and let me know. Cheers, guys.